Deep within the Canadian wilderness lies Arctomys Cave, the second deepest cave in the country, plunging an astonishing 1,160 feet, 536 meters, into the earth. But depth is just one of Arctomys' many challenges. The descent is divided into sections, with the initial stretch known ominously as the Endless Climb. Here, explorers face steep and vertical shafts that make rappelling down sheer rock faces feel like navigating a labyrinth of cliffs. To add to the challenge, many of these passages are flooded with icy runoff from nearby glaciers. On October 17, 1991, Rick Black, Chris Zimmerman, Hugo Mulick, and Ron Lassell prepared for an airlift to the cave's entrance. Rick, Chris, and Hugo were rangers at Mount Robson Provincial Park, and together with Ron, they formed a team of highly experienced cavers. After being dropped off, they quickly set up base camp and split into two groups. Rick and Chris ventured into the cave first, with Ron and Hugo following 3 hours later. Their mission took them deeper into the earth, 400 meters, by 11:30 p.m. Here, they encountered a vertical drop known as the Refresher, a 29-foot, 9-meter descent through a freezing waterfall that drenches anyone who dares to rappel down. One by one, they made their way down. But when it was Rick's turn, disaster struck. What they never realized was that the rope was secured to a 400-kilogram boulder instead of solid bedrock. As he moved, the boulder dislodged and crashed down, crushing Rick's pelvis and rendering him unconscious. The others rushed to Rick's side, relieved to find him alive but in excruciating pain. With his pelvis likely broken and other injuries uncertain, Rick was in no condition to move. The team, well versed in first aid, knew that Rick needed professional medical help. They faced a tough decision: attempt to carry him out or leave to find help. A failed attempt to move Rick convinced them that they had no choice but to split up. Chris stayed with Rick while Hugo and Ron embarked on the grueling journey to get help. The mission ahead was daunting. With no way to contact their helicopter pilot and a failed emergency radio, Hugo and Ron had to climb out of the cave and hike 20 kilometers to the highway to summon help. It took nearly 5 hours to reach the cave entrance and another 14 hours to walk through the forest to the road. Meanwhile, Chris stayed close to Rick, trying to keep him warm in the freezing, pitch-black cave. The two men turned off their headlamps to save battery power and huddled together, shivering as they waited for rescue. On October 18th, the RCMP launched a massive rescue operation. 3 planes were dispatched to gather cavers with rescue training from Vancouver Island. By the morning of October 19th, nearly 36 hours after the incident, the first rescuers were dropped off near the cave. Others set up a command center in the valley below. Inside the cave, Rick and Chris were unaware of the flurry of activity above ground. As time passed, their condition worsened. Rick urged Chris to leave and save himself, knowing that both of them staying would likely result in their deaths. Chris reluctantly agreed, promising to return with help. As he made his way out, he encountered the first rescuers, providing them with crucial information about Rick's condition before finally reaching the surface. Chris was immediately treated for hypothermia and airlifted to a hospital. Tragically, when rescuers reached Rick with medical supplies, it was too late. He had passed away shortly before their arrival. The news devastated the rescue team, many of whom knew Rick personally. The operation then shifted from a rescue to a recovery mission, and it took 2 more days to carry Rick's body out of the cave. An autopsy later revealed that Rick's injuries were fatal from the moment the boulder fell. The catastrophic damage to his body, including multiple major organs, meant that not even immediate hospital care could have saved him. Contrary to what many rescuers believed, Rick's cause of death was his injuries, not hypothermia. To this day, the mission to save Rick Black remains the most extensive cave rescue operation in Canadian history. With nothing more than a lantern and his adventurous spirit, Floyd entered Sand Cave alone. This labyrinth of tunnels and hidden chambers lay deep beneath the Earth's surface, promising new discoveries. The cool, damp air clung to him as he ventured further, the darkness wrapping around him like a heavy cloak. But Floyd was undeterred, driven by the thrill of the unknown. As he ventured deeper, he discovered a narrow crawlway he'd never seen before. Despite a moment's hesitation, he pressed on, squeezing through the tight passage. Suddenly, disaster struck. A massive rock dislodged from the ceiling, crashing down and trapping his leg under its immense weight. In an instant, Floyd's fearless journey turned into a desperate fight for survival, his cries for help echoing through the cave's silent passages. Realizing the severity of his situation, panic set in. Floyd was alone, pinned under a boulder, with no way to call for help. Hours passed like days as he struggled to free himself. The air grew thinner, and pain became his constant companion. Despite his efforts, he couldn't move, and hope began to slip away. Above ground, Floyd's absence sparked growing concern. His friends and family, expecting his return by nightfall, were alarmed when he didn't show up. On February 2nd, Floyd's brother Homer went on a desperate search, finally locating Floyd deep in the cave. But despite his efforts, he couldn't free his brother. Homer raced back to the surface, gathering a team of rescuers. The rescue teams knew it would be a difficult operation because of the treacherous terrain and narrow, winding passages. Each step brought new obstacles, including collapsing tunnels and the inability to reach Collins directly due to the unstable cave structure. At one point, a cave-in blocked access to him, further complicating the rescue. After reaching him, they too attempted to move the rock, but it refused to budge. News of the rescue spread like wildfire, drawing a crowd of onlookers. The rescue team began to grasp the enormity of Floyd's misjudgment. He had ventured too deep without proper equipment or support, a fatal error even for a seasoned caver. As the days ticked by, the rescue efforts intensified. A new shaft was dug, but unfortunately it collapsed, severing contact with Floyd. Undeterred, the rescuers dug another shaft, inching closer to their goal. Floyd's situation grew more desperate. Trapped in the cold, unforgiving cave, he battled pain and fear, clinging to the hope of rescue, but deep inside, he knew his time was running out. Hopes began to dwindle, and his body weakened from dehydration and exposure. Finally, on February 16th, the rescuers were able to reach him for the second time. By then, it was too late. Floyd Collins had succumbed to the cave's deadly embrace. He fought against all odds, beyond human capacity, but that too wasn't enough. The Floyd Collins rescue mission lasted 17 agonizing days. His body was brought back to the surface and they finally laid him to rest. Brent Koven, a 39-year-old software engineer, and 6 other cavers, led by Luca Carabini, were about to embark on an exciting adventure in Thunder Canyon Cave, hidden deep in eastern San Diego County. The journey to get there was an adventure in itself, requiring a long drive down a dirt road and a 2-mile hike through the wilderness. But the real challenge lay ahead. Recent rains had turned the calm cave waters into a raging torrent, promising a thrilling experience for the brave explorers. Sunday, May 3, 2010, the group arrived at the cave site at 11 a.m. With wetsuits and gear in place, they prepared to embark on a journey that would test their limits. The first challenge loomed ahead, a 45-foot rappel through a thundering waterfall, plunging them into a chilly pool. Brent's adrenaline surged at the thought of this thrilling descent. Next, they would tackle a daunting rock face, secured by a double rope anchored to a boulder near the cave's entrance. After successfully navigating the daunting 45-foot rappel, the group experienced a mix of emotions. While some exhaled a sigh of relief, others were visibly shaken by the experience. Luca, the guide, was pleased to see his team tackle the initial obstacle without incident. However, Steve, who followed closely behind, was soaked and was freaking out. Despite his concerns, Luca offered the group a chance to turn back, but their collective determination and thirst for adventure propelled them forward. Next, the group set up an 80-foot rappel. They then continued through the cave, crawling, climbing, and wading through icy water. They made 2 more rappels smoothly. By 3 p.m., they reached the terrible traverse, a crack that turns at a right angle and is only 9 inches wide, requiring sideways movement. A wooden board had been placed across the gap to prevent other adventure seekers from sliding down and getting stuck. The crack extends vertically for 200 feet and is less than 5 minutes from the downstream end of the cave, their goal for the day. Brent, tired and achy, felt a rush of excitement at reaching this part of the cave for the first time. It was a personal challenge and a rare accomplishment in the caving world. Luca led the way through the crack, positioning himself to provide support from the other side. Steve followed, but his fatigue and fear got the better of him, and he became stuck. Panic set in as he realized his worst nightmare was unfolding. The group sprang into action, pulling and pushing for 10 agonizing minutes until Steve was finally freed. Shaken and traumatized, Steve knew he was in over his head and couldn't continue. His priority now was to escape the cave as quickly as possible. As Steve's panic subsided, 3 more cavers efficiently navigated the crack without incident. Luca then guided them to the exit, confident that Brent and Jim could manage the challenging passage. Brent, however, felt his heart race as he approached the same daunting aperture that had trapped Steve. He prepared himself for the difficult maneuver, carefully moving his feet down the crack, then shimmying sideways before making a precarious 5-foot drop to the floor of the next chamber. Brent hesitated on his first attempt, doubting his ability to squeeze through, but Jim's encouragement spurred him on. Determined to avoid a lengthy retreat, Brent shed his wetsuit and attempted the passage again, wearing only his t-shirt. However, his hips wedged tightly, leaving him stuck and helpless, his face pressed against the unforgiving rock wall. Luca rushed back to the scene, and he and Jim launched a desperate rescue effort. But despite their best efforts, Brent remained stubbornly stuck. As the hours ticked by, 2 hours to be exact, Brent's arms numbed, and he slid further into the crack, the gap narrowing to a mere 8.5 inches. Jim's attempts to yank him out were excruciating and futile. The gravity of their situation hit home. If Brent didn't escape, neither would Jim. The group wrapped Brent in jackets, urging him to keep moving, as he drifted in and out of a dreamlike state in the total darkness, pierced only by Jim's headlamp. Jim's stories kept Brent awake, while Luca, Steve, and Ben worked tirelessly to keep him warm, fighting to prevent hypothermia from setting in. Luca finally reached the exit and sounded the alarm, summoning a rescue team to the scene. 4 experienced rescuers entered the cave, assessing the situation, and were shocked to find Brent had been trapped for nearly 6 hours, his body racked by severe hypothermia. They swiftly secured him in a harness, but Brent's weakness made it clear he couldn't climb out unaided. With painstaking care, the rescuers deployed a sledgehammer to painstakingly break up the rocks pinning Brent in place, inch by agonizing inch. Jim held Brent's hand, offering words of encouragement as the rescuers worked tirelessly to free him from the unforgiving grip of the cave. At 6 a.m., after a grueling 9 hours, Brent was finally freed from the crack. The group pulled him out, ensured he was conscious, and dragged him to the cave's exit. The exhausted rescue team took turns carrying him up the steep rock face, and Brent was rushed to the hospital for treatment of severe hypothermia and dehydration. He was reported stable. This next story has a rather unclear end, although the events that unfolded was due to poor decision-making once again. But being a story that is circled around with some details missing can only lead us to make assumptions of what could have actually happened inside. Back in 2010, a group of 3 high school seniors, Alex, Rachel, and Jack, decided to explore a cave in Vancouver that was getting a lot of attention from their town. After going through its narrow passages, there comes a beautiful chamber within which sparkles when light shines on it. Eager to look at it themselves, the group starts preparing. Among the 3, Alex, although a rookie, was the most experienced in caving, while Rachel was an experienced rock climber. As for Jack, this was something he was trying out for the first time. The new adventure that came with its risks made him both scared and excited at the same time. What Jack never knew was that his first ever caving venture would scar him a significant trauma which he will never be able to forget in his entire lifetime. As they stepped into the cave's mouth, their headlamps paved the way for them. They crawled into small yet easy-to-navigate passages. With each step, the air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and decay, and the sound of constant dripping water indicated that the floor might become muddy in any of the passages. However, the group was fully prepared and were well equipped. The group pressed further and delved deeper into the cave's mysterious depths. Alex was the only one among the 3 who was familiar with the cave's layout, so he usually led the way while others followed. As they climbed up a steep slope, they reached a narrow spot called the Squeeze Penetration. It led to 2 paths, one to a big room and another that got even smaller and led to unknown territory. Alex told his friends to be careful because the passage was tight. Being the one most familiar and most experienced, Alex should have been the one to lead this passage as well. However, for some odd reason, he decided to go in at last. That was probably his biggest caving mistake. Rachel, who was small and slim, 5'3", went first and made it through easily. Jack, 5'7", with a medium build, followed close behind, breathing hard as he squeezed through. Alex, who was the tallest, over 6 feet, and weighed 166 pounds, followed. Both Rachel and Jack made their way towards the chamber. Knowing that Alex is much more experienced than them, they kept moving forward without looking back. It was an easy crawl, because that passage went straight to the chamber. Alex, who was behind, maneuvered upwards towards the narrow passage. As the section got narrower and narrower, Alex felt a tight squeeze towards the center of his body. Probably he started to panic, and the anxiety got the better of him. Baffled by the situation, he took the wrong route, and instead went straight into the passage which was leading towards uncharted territory. To make matters worse, it was even narrower than he expected. As soon as he pushed forward, his body was stuck, unable to move either forward or backward. He was completely wedged. Rachel and Jack kept going, not realizing Alex was stuck. Alex called out for help, but his voice was drowned out by the sound of dripping water. His friends were too far away to hear him. As the time went by, Alex's predicament became dire. While it was inevitable that his friends would figure out Alex is missing, time was of the essence. The cave walls were pressing against Alex's body, making it harder for him to breathe. Each breath was a struggle. Also, it's common for caves with little to no ventilation to have lower air quality. After being wedged, Alex must have felt the air growing stale, leading to less oxygen. Rachel and Jack entered a stunning cavern, its walls gleaming in the light of their headlamps. Mesmerized by the sight, they failed to notice Alex's absence. But as they turned to exit, they realized their friend was nowhere to be found. Rachel's heart froze as she realized Alex wasn't around. Her first thought was exactly what had happened. She quickly retraced their steps, trying to look for any sign of Alex. Jack, who was on his first caving adventure, was not prepared for such an unfortunate situation. As they crawled back, they prayed for the reality to be different than what they feared. As they approached the squeeze penetration, both could hear Alex's cries. She carefully followed the sounds and reached Alex. Their fear was indeed a reality. Jack must have been shaken finding out that Alex was stuck, and now they need to rescue him, the guy who they were depending on. Rachel held Alex's legs and called his name out, trying to reassure him. "Alex, we are here. Everything is going to be all right." As they were 3 people, they had followed the golden rule of caving, which was a blessing in that situation. Rachel decided to stay back and instructed Jack to get help. Jack, mustering all his courage, gathered himself up and made his way out of the cave to get help. Rachel knew that Alex was in grave danger, and every minute counted. It was important for Alex to have faith more than anyone. Rachel kept reminding him that help is on its way, and they will save him. Jack dashed through the cave, his heart pounding in his chest. He finally reached the entrance and called for help, his voice trembling as he explained the situation to the authorities. The rescue team arrived in a few hours, their experienced eyes scanning the passage. They assessed the situation and got to work, carefully trying to extract Alex from the tight spot. They drilled hooks and used a rope to pull him out. As the minutes ticked by, Alex's condition became more serious. His body was getting weaker, and his mind was filled with fear. Finally, after 4 long hours, the rescue team managed to free Alex from the passage. He was in a critical state, and they quickly carried him out of the cave, their lights illuminating the dark passageway. It is said that the team did everything they could, however, Alex couldn't make it. Why, though, is not clear. He was stuck inside for more than 8 hours. Alex's friends and family were devastated by the loss, but they took comfort in the fact that Rachel and Jack had done everything they could to save him.